Okay, can everybody see my slide okay? Okay. Um, when I've got the presentation up right now, Ed is all I can see. So
yeah, we can see it. So
okay. All right. Thank you. So as you can see, this is based on a class that I took at Washington University's Brown School last month. It was a week long. It was an hour and a half each day. I am not going to talk nearly that long today, but this is just going to be kind of a summary of what they told us about. This is about obviously sustainability. So yeah. Okay, now my slides are not advancing, so. Okay, I'm going to stop the share and start again, so. Okay, here we go. So the class talked about a sustainability tool. There are 2 questionnaires available to help with sustainability. The PSAT is for public health organizations and the CSAT is for clinical organizations. We don't necessarily fall into either one, but we work with a lot of organizations that might fall into one or the other. I'm thinking that we might be able to use one of these tools or share the tools with the groups that we work with. I've already shared it with one of our organizations. So the PSAT stands for Program Sustainability Assessment Tool. There are 8 domains. I'll share the website with you and tell you how to get to that. It was the first one developed, so there are more resources. One of the sections of the website has a lot of resources for where do you go if you need help with this, or what do you do if you need help with that, or who do you talk to about all of this stuff. So there are more resources available with that one just because it's been around a little bit longer. And after they had been doing that for a while and they got some, questions from places that this doesn't really fit for me. So what do I do? So, sorry, I digressed a little bit. So the domains for the PSAT are environmental support. You'll see in some of the literature that I share with you, it used to be called political support, and they changed the name to environmental support because they felt like it was more inclusive, and political didn't really cover everything that they were looking to get at. Funding stability, partnerships, organizational capacity, program evaluation, program adaptation, communications, and strategic planning. And now here we are with the CSAT, the Clinical Sustainability Assessment Tool. There are 7 domains for that one. There's a little bit of similarity, but some differences just because the clinical organizations would be things like treatment providers, mental health counseling centers, and things like that. So as opposed to health clinics and things like that, that just have some, you're looking at different types of things that their missions are. For the CSAT, the domains are engaged staff and leadership, engaged stakeholders, organizational readiness, workflow integration, implementation and training, monitoring and evaluation, and outcomes and effectiveness. So the process that you would go through in order to do this, you would define the program being assessed. So it's not necessarily the whole agency. It could potentially be just one part of the agency, one specific program that, say a grant that they've gotten that they're hoping to be able to sustain. Definitions are important. So you want to make sure that when you say organization or when you say program, the people that will be taking the assessment know things like what I just said. Are you evaluating the whole agency? Are you evaluating this one particular thing? When you talk about staff, are you talking about just the treatment staff or staff and volunteers or staff and management? Or, yeah, it's good to know so that we're talking about apples and oranges or not talking about apples and oranges. Identify the participants. It is designed so that you can do this as an individual or as a group, and say the staff of that particular program. And so, who's going to take the assessment? And then the final step of this part of the process is to complete the sustainability tool, fill out the questionnaire. And then from there, you would develop a plan. So you would assemble the planning team who's going to be in on figuring out what we do with the results of this assessment. They suggest you review the program's mission and purpose at that stage, just to make sure that what are we really doing here? What's our why? Review your assessment results, or CSAT, or whichever one you took. Determine which program element should be maintained, eliminated, or adapted. You think about sustainability, it's easy to say, well, let's sustain the whole thing. We want to keep everything up. Well, if something's not necessarily working, you may or may not want to keep the whole thing. If something, you're not getting a whole lot of bang for your buck, it's very costly to continue the whole thing. And, you can keep up some of the things that you're getting a lot of outcomes for not a lot of money, those might be the things you want to keep, and the other ones not so much. That gets a little bit dicey with some things are, you're supposed to be, continue fidelity to the model. You're supposed to do it the way they intended you to do it and not go tweaking it and changing it and that kind of thing. But so that might be something to consider, but at least think about it. So prioritize the areas of sustainability capacity to address first. When we get more into it, you'll see you get a report that tells you of those 7 or 8 domains, depending on which one you did, you'll get some things that, hey, we're doing really good at this and kind of so-so at that and really bad at that. And it might be tempting to say, oh, the ones that we're really bad at, we want to work on that. We really need to fix that. Well, it may be easier to start with something that you're doing a little better at, that, it's an easier fix, and that might kind of give you some incentive to keep going. And, it's just, you don't necessarily want to take on the hardest part first, because that could be discouraging. And then you write a sustainability action plan with your specific action steps. And the final part of the plan is taking action, where you would implement the sustainability action plan. And they suggested reassessing your sustainability capacity annually, if that often. You might want to do it every couple of years. Probably not more often than that, unless something drastic has happened. If you feel like, you've been through a whole change and, say new leadership came in and things have changed drastically and you just want to make sure you're still okay. But for the most part, things are not going to change much in just a few months. So you don't want to take on too big of, you don't want to keep reassessing and reassessing and reassessing and then never giving your plan a chance to take effect. So some places don't do it only every 5 years. So kind of depends on how things are going for you and what your plan shows. If you think your sustainability action plan would take a while to really start showing some effects, you don't necessarily need to redo the assessment more often than that. Okay, and we've probably all heard about SMART goals and objectives, the specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. Um, there is a suggestion, and this wasn't part of this class. This was, I've heard this other places too, that you can add inclusion and equity and call them SMARTY goals. So I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time on that, but that's the framework that you would use to set your objectives and your goals. So obviously the goal would be the overarching. You want to pick one of those domains and set a goal, and then your objectives are, how do I get to that goal? So some of the details that they talked about, I mentioned that you can take the assessment as an individual or part of a group. And they suggested no more than 12 people to take the assessment at one time. Because the idea is to discuss it together. And if you get a group much bigger than 12 people, it's hard to do that. You know, there's too many cooks, too many people trying to throw in ideas, and, you know, not as many people, you know, it's harder for people to be heard. And, you know, they said if you really felt like there was a reason that, you know, we've got a group of 14 managers, for instance, and, you know, it would really be helpful to have those 14 people do it. There is a way to set it up so that, you know, those 14 people could do it. You just need to kind of contact the administrators and they'll help you get to that point. But typically, you set it up with an administrator, and that person puts in who the other 12 people, and you don't have to have 12 whole people if you know, if your group is only 6 people or however many, you can up to 12 people do it, as many as you want. It gives you an average and a range for each of the domains, and it's a 7-point scale from 1 to 7. So if you scored a 1 on a particular domain, you're not doing that so much at all. If you scored a 7, you're rocking and rolling on that. And then it gives you the range for, you know, say if you had your 12 people do it, and, you know, your scores might have been all over the board. One person said we were horrible at that, and one person said we're doing really great at that. And, you know, but for the most part, your score probably, or your range probably won't be the whole 7 points. It will be anywhere from a 4 to a 6 or whatever it was. And then you get what the average was. So you don't lose the individual stuff. If there were some outliers, you see that. So for the people that filled it out, each person will get an individual report saying, you know, summarizing, you know, here's what you said on all of this stuff. And then the administrator, whoever set up the group, gets a group report with aggregate results. So it's set up that you can't really, or you shouldn't be able to figure out, hey, Ed was the one that said we really did horrible on that. And Jeff said we did really good. So I like Jeff better than Ed, or, you know, and I'm sorry, I'm picking on you, Ed, but, you know, it's set up so that you can't really tell who said what. It gives you the range and the average. It only takes a few minutes to complete the assessment. You can stop and come back to it if, you know, something horrible happens in the meantime. You get a phone call or a text saying your kid is on fire or whatever, and you can stop and come back to it. But for the most part, I think when I did it, only took me like 15 minutes. So they really suggest that you answer as much of it as possible. You can skip questions or say, you know, don't know or not applicable, but that waters down the results of the report that you get. You know, if 8 out of your 12 people said, I don't know to that question, you're not going to get much as far as that question goes. So the important stuff, the sustaintool.org. And I'll make these slides available to everybody, and the references and the recording. So if you need to go back and look at this, or for people that didn't get a chance to be here today. So it's not all about the money. You know, you think about sustainability and we all have to write that into our grant. And, you know, what we typically think of is I'm going to write another grant to do this all over again. And there are more things to sustainability than just getting more money. You know, things like we're going to train the staff so that they know how to do this stuff and they can do it going forward. Obviously, agencies have to have some money from somewhere at some point, but you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be this another big grant to do the exact same thing. They really suggested that you focus on one domain when you go to write your plan. Two at the most, because if you try and do all 7 or 8 domains at once, that's, you know, you're going to be trying to keep too many plates in the air and you're not going to do anything well. So, you know, and when you set the goals, you set up a time frame to do it. So, you know, within the next 3 months or by the end of the year or whatever it is. When you're setting your objectives, they really should be kind of short term like that and not, you know, for the next 5 years, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So if you try and do all of them at once, it's going to be too much. And then if you know, you do that for the next 6 months or by the end of the year or whatever it is, and then you could move on to the second domain or the third domain or whatever it is. They suggested that you write domains into our grant funders, into our grants, because you know, funders like to see that, you know, we are thinking about more than just we're going to write another grant. They suggested having a North Star, the thing that, you know, we're all about hope or we're all about whatever, and, you know, kind of relate everything back to that. If you do more than one version of this assessment, say you do one now and then you go back and do it a year from now and then a year after that, you can access all of your versions. You set up an account when you go into the website, and then you can see, hopefully you've made lots of progress since then. You really should be detailed enough in your plans that anyone can pick up and do this. If I write the plan and next week I write the lottery and you never win the lottery and you never hear from me again, somebody should be able to go in my office, find the plan on my desk and say, okay, we need to do X, Y, and Z. It's not all in my brain. Focus on what you can change. You know, we all wish there were things that were different and we had more money or we had more whatever, or we could get people to do what we want them to, but you know, all you can do is what you can do. And, you know, there were those 7 or 8 domains, depending on which version of this that you want. Sometimes, and a lot of people will think, oh, what, you only want me to work on 1 or at the most 2 of these at once? Well, you know, working on one has an impact on the other. So if I'm increasing my communication so more people out there in the world know the good work that my agency is doing, that could lead to more environmental support. That could lead a bunch of people to want to donate money to us in a perfect world. But, you know, one thing can kind of nudge the other. And here are my references. So thank you, Ed. He got the, see, I shouldn't have picked on him earlier. He's the one that got my links to work so that when I send the PowerPoint to you, you'll be able to click on that and go right to the article. So these are 3 articles that some research they did on this to kind of prove how helpful it is and how it works and so on and so forth. So obviously when I'm presenting, I get a little nervous and talk fast. So I got done with that really quick. So if anybody has any questions, I'll leave it up for a minute. And if you want me to go back to anything, let me know, or.
Kathy,
Yes.
did they, and you might have mentioned this early on, I just don't remember, but did they give any thoughts about kind of the frequency of doing this or timing, like if an agency has a grant, and they're implementing something like during at a certain point, they should do a certain domain or pick a domain and do one, or do this every 6 months or anything along those lines, or does it just depend on?
Well, they suggested doing the assessment once a year. Because typically, more often than that, things are not going to change that much, unless something really bizarre has happened in your agency, like all of the staff quit and you had to hire all new staff, which does happen sometimes. But for the most part, you would want to do the assessment, set your goals, do the steps you said you were going to do when you set your goals, and then give that stuff a chance to work and implement your plans. Basically, you don't want to do it more often than that, or it's not going to have a chance to work and show any changes.
Okay.
Hey, Kathy, I have a question. This is Donna.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering if you are having thoughts about how you're going to use this for agencies, or how you're going to help use this, or what you're going to do with it.
Well, like I said, I just took the class last month. I have sent it to one agency, and he was probably cussing me because he had just done a whole slew of work on sustainability, and then I sent him this stuff. So he's like, dagnabbit, why weren't you there last month? But I have not heard back from him yet. And honestly, he did a bunch of sustainability work and then wrote another huge grant. So I don't even know if he's had a chance to look at this yet. He's not come back to me with any questions, or, he may just be exhausted right now and not really looking at anything. But there is another agency. I will circle back with that first person and just see if he has any questions, if he, wants any more information about it. I do have another agency that we work with quite a bit that I'm going to send this information to. So, just kind of see what they want to do with it. And I think it's kind of up to them as far as, what they want to do and how they want to use their results. But yeah, that is kind of the idea, to see, look at your capabilities and, how this might impact your grants and how you can keep doing some of the stuff that you've been doing and continue the work.
Great, thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions?
Just wanted to say thanks for the presentation, though. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
It's useful to have that. And I mean, we can use, for the parts of it that involve them selecting components that are more or less successful, evaluators can provide information to help them with that. Usually we're thinking, I know from our perspective as evaluators, we're thinking we hope they write more grants because we can do more evaluation work that way, but we can help them find other ways to support sustaining pieces of what they do with the data we collect too.
Okay. Now, okay, I will send the PowerPoint out to everybody that was here today, and I'll save a copy of the recording. I think Kelly's archiving all of this stuff, so we'll send out an email when that's ready, and anybody else that wasn't able to be here. can access that. So thanks everybody for being here today.
Thanks
Thank you.
again.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.